Oh, I just feel so adorable in this thing. I just want to go prancing about. Hi everyone, Kate here, and this week I will be taking you along with me as I make a 1920s swimming costume. This video is actually a rather late entry into the Vintage Pool Party Make-Along. This was a make-along hosted by Gwen of Gwen Shenanigans. She's lovely. I'll leave a link to her channel down below. The idea behind this make-along was to make a vintage or historical inspired bathing suit during the summer. Very simple, those were all the rules, there was no firm deadline. Now, as I mentioned, I'm rather late to the party. I know summer in the southern hemisphere is just around the corner, but here in Canada, it's over in 2 days. Not entirely sure if I'm gonna get this whole video edited and uploaded by the time that it's still actually summer, but I'm going to try. I actually didn't think I was going to have time to participate in this project at all. I knew I was going to be quite busy this summer, and my health has been kind of up and down lately. However, with about 1 week to spare, I realized that I was going to have just a little tiny bit of sewing time, so I thought I could squeeze in a super speedy sewing project. By the way, if you are new to my channel, hi, as I said, my name is Kate. I do occasionally do sewing projects, but the main focus of my channel is usually more beauty products and historical articles from the past, usually about some sort of beauty culture topic or lifestyle topic. I think that describes my channel. I'm not entirely sure how to describe my channel. It doesn't really have a firm genre other than old things I'm interested in. If any of my long-term subscribers can come up with a better description, please leave it down below. I never know how to describe what I do. It's kind of random. I mean, last week I made a video about mosquito repellents from the 1920s, so... Well, without any further preamble, let's just jump into this whirlwind of a project. I knew I wanted to make a 1920s inspired design for my swimsuit. I love Edwardian style bathing costumes, but I already have one I made a few years back, as well as a 1940s two-piece, which I made a few years before that. Clearly, there was a 1920s shaped gap in my swimming wardrobe. I ended up settling on this pattern from a 1921 issue of, please excuse my attempt at a French accent, Les Modes de la Femme de France. Its simple shape meant it wouldn't require any time-consuming pattern drafting, and I am partial to designs with interesting draping. However, sometimes illustrated interesting draping turns out to be interesting draping in real life. I opted for the two-piece version of this design as I thought it looked a bit cuter. The original pattern is in French, but with the help of the diagrams and Google Translate, I was able to form a plan of attack. I used the original pattern for the top, and as they don't supply a shorts pattern or any drafting instructions, I opted for a previously drafted bloomer pattern for the bottoms. Any shorts pattern would really work here, as most of the bottoms are covered by the tunic style top piece anyways. My sewing room is a bit of a disaster at the moment, so instead of bringing in even more supplies into this very small room, I decided to try to work entirely from stash. The original instructions suggest either a taffeta or some sort of woven material. The way the fabric hangs is very important for a design like this, and it needs to be quite flowy, but also thick enough so that it won't cling, awkwardly when wet. I selected this woven wool blend material as it has a really nice drape to it and is both thick and opaque enough that there won't be any embarrassing incidents when this thing hits the water. Unfortunately, I only had this one piece left, and as it was going to be made into a skirt originally, it has a huge hole in the middle. It was a tight fit to squeeze this swimsuit onto this little piece of material. I had to go down a bloomer size to get them to fit, but luckily even the smaller size of bloomers are quite roomy, so this shouldn't affect the fit or my ability to move around while swimming. I began by cutting out my swimsuit bottoms using the bloomer pattern as a guide. The top was such a simple shape that I actually didn't bother to make a pattern. Instead, I started by cutting 2 rectangles, each measuring approximately 80 centimeters by 60 centimeters. Because of the hole, I had to trim them down a bit in the end, so it was closer to 55 centimeters, with one side being slightly larger than the other. Not intentional, I was just super tired when I was making this. The larger piece is going to be the front piece. In order to save some time later, I finished all 4 edges of the rectangle with my serger. It's not a super historical edge finish, but no one's going to be seeing the inside when I'm wearing it, and I wanted a durable suit on a deadline. The shorts are pajama bottom style with a very simple elastic waist, so I started with these. At this point in my sewing life, I can make pajama bottoms in my sleep. Pun slightly intended. I serged the crotch seam front and back, and then serged the inseam. I typically pre-sew part of this inseam before serging it together to make sure everything stays perfectly aligned. I also finished the raw edges of the waistband and the legs using my serger. Since I had to go a size smaller than I would have liked, I was a bit worried they might be too small, but yay, they actually fit! I'm gonna go back to the shorts later, but let's move along to the swimsuit top. I took the front and the back pieces and marked the center front edge with a pin. For the neckline, I cut a 25 centimeter slit down the front and a 15 centimeter slit down the back. From here, I measured 10 centimeters to either side for the shoulder seam. From the corners, I measured 15 centimeters across and 10 centimeters down. Since I did upsize this pattern, my shoulder marks don't quite align, so I split the difference and I made a third mark in between the two. To make the armholes, I cut from the side mark I had made to this center mark in a straight line. I repeated this for both the shoulders front and back. Next, I had to take a quick cat cuddle break. It's a very important part of the sewing process. Going back to the armholes, I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to finish the edges. In the end, I opted for serging the newly formed raw edges and then creating a narrow hem with just the zigzag stitch. You can do this by folding the fabric over itself twice to make a traditional narrow hem, but I've had really good luck with this zigzag method in the past. It's really easy and less fiddly than a traditional narrow hem, and when you're tired and pressed for time, that typically wins out over the more advanced finishing methods. Okay, so by this point, I was starting to run out of steam. I decided to end for the night by sewing both the shoulder seams and the side seams, just with a simple straight stitch. Unfortunately, as often happens to the tired seamstress, I made a boo-boo. I completely forgot to leave part of the side seam open for the slits along the bottom. That's how you know it's time to quit. Because I didn't really know what size the original pattern was supposed to be, I was pretty nervous this top wasn't going to fit right. There isn't much size information given, and I wasn't sure how loose the top was really supposed to be. So for my peace of mind, before turning out the lights and calling it a night, I gave it a quick try on, and it fits! Yay! It's not a total disaster. I'll call that a win. I returned the next evening to sew on the finishing details. Overnight, my seam ripper and I had picked out all those extra stitches that I sewed along the side, and I was ready to hem the blouse. I used the same zigzag method that I used on the sleeve edges along the bottom. Then I carefully pinned the slits open and finished the edges with that same type of stitch. It's perhaps not the most elegant seam finishing, but the black thread blends so well into this material that I don't really mind it. As I said, nobody's going to be looking too closely at this thing, other than all of you. While I was at the machine, and it was all set up, I decided to hem the bottom of the shorts as well, and attach a black elastic for the waistband. I just stretched the elastic and zigzagged it flat to the shorts. This again isn't the most elegant of waistbands, but it won't be visible under the blouse at all, and it gives a smoother finish than a traditional cased elastic waistband. A drawstring or other closure would have been more historically accurate, but I was opting for practicality here, as I do intend to actually swim in this thing, and I want it to be as comfortable as possible. Next, I stopped for a cat dance break. This is also a very important part of the sewing process. With the shorts done, all I had to do was just sew on the trim and the neckline details. I like how I just said just. This turned out to be way more difficult than anticipated. The original article is very coy about how to finish the neckline. I had debated using a contrasting bias binding, but I decided to stick with the original plain finish. To do this, I thought I'd just use a simple facing and finish it like a regular V neckline. The problem is that it isn't a regular V neckline. And it's not really a slit either, it's something in between. I just couldn't get any sort of facing to sit properly. And can I just add here that picking out dark stitches on this dark background was not a pleasant experience. While any wonky stitches won't show up on this material, neither do any of the ones that I'm trying to pick out. This makes attacking it with a stitch ripper incredibly difficult. I did accidentally tear a little bit of the front point with the stitch ripper, which caused some issues later on. I ultimately got really frustrated for the night and just gave up. This was the last of the sewing machine time I had budgeted, but I knew if I finished the neck mostly by hand, I could sneak in a few hours when everybody else in the household was sleeping. I can't run my sewing machine when people are sleeping, but I can hand stitch. I didn't get any footage of this as I was doing it at about 4 in the morning, but here's the final result. I'm not a big fan of hand stitching as I find it quite tedious and hard on my hands, but you do have a lot more control, and I was able to very carefully ease a flat bias binding around the slit without adding any extra bulk that would have affected the draping. The only problem is that, as I mentioned before, I had slightly cut the front point with the stitch ripper, so it led to a slightly crooked point at the front. In order to hide this, I had to cut off a bit of material which rounded out the front point, and position my bias binding to disguise it as best I could. Sometimes these things happen. I used some white elastic for my strips along the front neckline and sides. The original instructions used contrasting fabric pieces, but they were attached by buttons, and there was no way I was hand stitching 18 buttonholes at 4 in the morning. However, I did like this extra detailing, so I searched through my vintage button stash and hand-stitched an assortment of white buttons on for purely decorative purposes. I couldn't quite get them all to match, as 18 is quite a few to find in vintage buttons, but I came pretty close. And that's it. This is my finished swimsuit. It may not be the most elegantly constructed, nor the most historically accurate on the inside, but I think it really captured the look and the feeling that I was going for. I really wanted that sort of late teens, early 20s, Mac Sennett bathing beauty kind of look. And I think I got that. I am quite pleased with how this turned out. I did make the matching hat. I didn't wear it for the final outfit shots because it's kind of odd fitting. And I didn't film making it. It's just a circle with a little brim sewed onto it with an elastic. It's kind of dopey. But I kind of like dopey headwear, so. As of filming, I haven't actually had a chance to test this swimsuit out in the water. I don't have a pool. I don't know anybody with a pool. There's no pools. However, I am going up to my grandmother's cottage in a couple weeks, sort of end of September, early October, and this idiot's going swimming. I went swimming last year, and I felt so good. When the Victorians did the whole cold water therapy thing, they were onto something. I have not felt that great in years. It didn't last very long. It only lasted like half an hour. But whatever, I don't know if it was the adrenaline or just some chemicals that my body was releasing to try to stop me from dying in the cold water, but I felt really, really good. So I'm going swimming again on this autumn trip, and I will wear the swimsuit. I'll try to remember to get a little bit of video. If I don't get video, I'll just post like an Instagram photo or something, but I'm going to try to get video and then maybe do like a YouTube short or some little update post just to let you know how it does when it's actually wet. I don't think I'm going to wear the belt because the belt is like a real belt and I don't want to get the real belt wet, but anyway, we'll see how it goes. It'll be cold. I can tell you that much. Well, that's it for this video. As always, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye! This video is made possible through the generous support of my Patreon members. Thank you. Yeah, and end of the season and I make swimsuits and mosquito videos. I'm very seasonal. Right on top of those trends. Very graceful. By the sea, by the sea, by the beautiful sea. I feel like I need a trip to the seaside. I don't live anywhere near the seaside, but I feel the need for seasideness in is that a word, seasideness, in this outfit. Oh, jeez. I need a bigger workspace. Okay, summer's over. Autumn time.